It's the Canada Day weekend, and we're celebrating up here in Canada. Welcome to the Alberta to Arizona Real Estate Show. I'm Tracie Gray, your host, and then the stars of the show, Devin Gray and Diane Brennan, professional real estate agents who are going to tell you about investing and buying real estate in Canada and the United States. And my favorite part, comparing the differences too. So do you want to start?
Yeah, well,
One difference is it's Independence Day here on the 4th.
I was going
Canada
to
Day on
say, yes, so it's Canada Day tomorrow. We're filming this on a Thursday, Canada Day tomorrow. But yes, July the 4th is Monday.
Yeah, for sure.
And what do you have? So it's actually a long weekend in both, a true long weekend in both Canada and the US. Are you doing anything over the long weekend?
Well, being the age I am, I'm just like going to relax. Back in the day, I'd be doing something exciting like camping and traveling somewhere, and I'm just tired, let me tell you. So I am just going to, it's been pretty busy. I've had a lot of drama going on in real estate. So yeah, I'm just going to take it easy, I think. But you never know. Might get a wild hair.
Yeah, I was gonna say, as soon as you say you're gonna have low drama, that means you're gonna have all kinds of crazy drama come out of the woodwork, Diane.
Right, for sure. Just
Yes, did I hear you're firing a client?
Oh, yes. I
And
had
real
to.
estate agents are allowed to do that. Maybe some people don't know that that happens, but it does.
Well, yeah, it's just like any working relationship. If you don't get along or you see there's some issues, I had to tell a client, like, I don't think I'm the right person for you and that you should find another agent. So that
Wow.
didn't go well. But anyway, so,
No, and not
well,
something I imagine you look forward to.
yeah, exactly. So it ended up having to be this was the client where I was representing them as a buyer. He was pretty stressed out going through a divorce situation. So I think he had a lot of stress on him and just kind of culminated. And I was representing him as a buyer. There was another agent doing the listing. So I helped out in order to get the purchase through by, offering my staging items and stuff for free and stuff. So it ended up with a civil standby, which is police have to escort you in order to get my belongings back. So every year I was telling Tracie before we record that, once a year I'm like ready to quit real estate. I just have had enough after how many years. And this is my time this year that I was like, okay, I've had enough. I've got to go apply for a job or something like that. But, normally I love real estate and stuff. There's just some difficult times, especially when you're a female. It can be a little bit difficult at times when you get into those kind of situations and, safety is an issue. And so recommend if there's any female agents watching, police are happy to do standbys or do anything else like to protect you and stuff. So, and I have to think, yeah. So
Actually, that reminds me of something that happened last summer, and just in regards to getting the police involved in that. And so there was these newer investors that all they were just looking for was cheap, 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 cheap. They didn't really necessarily, obviously, care about location or anything like that. They just wanted inexpensive. And so they found this like 5-unit building in one of the rougher areas of downtown Edmonton. And I got there early, and I was standing on the street corner in front of the property, and I happened to notice this black Explorer coming out of the alleyway, and it was moving really slow. And I thought, oh, okay, this will be interesting to see what happens here. And then it slowly turned towards me, and then it pulled up, and it stopped right in front of me. And I looked, and it was 2 police officers in a ghost car. And they said, "Oh, are you a real estate agent?" Just the way I was dressed and my clipboard and that, and the for sale sign. And
name,
I said, yes.
name tag on the,
Name tag. I'm a realtor. Yes, exactly. It's like, how did you know? I said, yeah, I'm just waiting for my clients. And they said, do you want us to walk through the building first to make sure it's okay before you guys go in? I was like, wow, what kind of place is this? So. Right. Yes, they got out. I said, sure, why not? This will be fun. And so they did. They went in, and there wasn't anything overly bad going on. But
right.
It was just, they just said that, yeah, we knew this property really, really well. And then the icing on the cake about how I knew that this was a very stressful property is that there was kind of this makeshift landlord. She lived in the basement and kind of sort of overlooked the place, so she said. And she told me that the 42-year-old owner, who owned 2 or 3 other properties like this in the same area, was in the hospital because of a heart attack. at 42.
Wow.
I thought, well, considering that he's managing 4 buildings like this, I'm not surprised that he said
Wow. Well, that was so nice of the police. My gosh.
I
Right, yeah.
know, and I thought, well, I've got it. And they knew one of the tenants, based on it was an experience for sure.
Wow. Well, that's good. That's good. You have that backup for sure. We should
Well,
talk
yeah.
about, I think you guys should tell everybody the story about your investor friend that you told me off the
Yeah,
air.
go ahead. The nakedness.
Well, and I'll start. Okay. So I started off the air. We were talking about,
Nakedness.
I'm like,
there was a situation where here in the US where I was showing a property and I went into the unit first before my client arrived because you want to turn the lights on and make it look good and open up the windows and all that kind of stuff. Well, as I was going into the house, I could hear somebody and they're like, get out of here. What are you doing? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I thought this place was vacant. That's what the listing agent told me. And he goes, no, I'm living here. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. So I go out and I, panicked. I'm like, oh my gosh, and shocked because I wasn't expecting that. And I called the listing agent and I said, oh my gosh, you have someone's inside here. I thought it was vacant. She goes, there shouldn't be. Oh no, blah, blah, blah. And as I'm talking to her, he comes out, nothing but a t-shirt on. Okay. Naked from the waist down. And then he lifts up his t-shirt just to prove that point. He goes, and I was sleeping. Anyways, so you run into all sorts of stuff on the topic of female
talk about
agents.
putting an exclamation point on that.
Well, it really was. It's more like, yeah, it was
Were
more
you
like
sleeping or just in bed?
Yeah, it was crazy. So
Yeah, so that investor friend that you're talking about, Diane, that's a friend of ours that actually you would get along with really well, especially sharing stories. Her name's Shelley Visser. She's down in Calgary. She's been a real estate investor for a very long time. And she manages a lot of her own properties as well. And she had a tenant that unfortunately moved into a property and didn't pay rent at all. And so they had to start the eviction process to get the tenant out of there. And they did a pre-walkthrough before the eviction to see if there was damages done to the property, to kind of see the condition that it was in. And the tenant showed up at the door and said, oh, hang on, I've got to put my dogs away. And then he shut the door and was gone for a long period of time. And when he came back, the dogs were still out and he was completely naked.
what? Like, what is this deal?
Yeah.
So
But
why
I think
was
he's trying to scare them off is what he was trying to
so that they wouldn't come inside? Okay.
They wouldn't come inside, but it didn't stop them. They still went in. They did the full tour of the house.
This bonehead's just standing there naked.
Yeah. Starting to cover up. Oh, what have I done? Apparently this wasn't such a good idea.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
He didn't realize it was Shelley Visser at the door.
Yes.
That's what he didn't realize. So
Realizing his shortcomings.
Exactly. So do you have to in Edmonton give how much notice to be able to go into the property? So she had to give him 48-hour notice before she entered?
It's a 24-hour notice.
Written
Written
notice.
notice. So you basically have to go for something like that. Like you can phone a tenant and just ask, say, hey, can I come in? But they have every right to refuse that. But if you actually go to the property and on the front door, sometimes front and back because they might miss it, you have to put a notice of entry. And the best thing you can do is take pictures of it and so that you've got the timestamp to show that it has been there. Ideally, you're putting that more than 24 hours ahead in advance, and then and they'll still potentially push back. It's not convenient, but basically that notice of entry basically is no longer a request; it's a notice that we're coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So I had another interesting story talking about drama that reminded me of. So I had one of the first cases that was interesting for lawyers here. That's a really good intro. And it had to do with, I had an Airbnb. So this whole case was, do we treat Airbnbs like a hotel? If you act like a jerk, then you're kicked out. Or is an Airbnb like a regular rental where you have to give notice? So I had, my one rule when I do short-term rentals and on my own is if someone's in an emergency situation, or not emergency, because obviously I'd give them help, call 911. But if someone needs to rent that night, I generally don't rent to them. So they have to give me a little bit more notice. So that's my one rule. So I had this woman call me and say, I'm in town. My place fell through, can I rent? Everything in my gut was telling me, say no, you know what I mean? But everything I threw at her, she kind of had a good comeback. And I was kind of in a position where I was like, my friend said, why didn't you just tell her you rented to someone else? And I said, I should. I wasn't quick enough on my feet. I let her rent. Anyways, it was a nightmare. It ended up with police officers. She moved all of her stuff in. It was a one-night rental. And it ended up with 6 police officers at the house. Her very high and, smoking medical marijuana all in the Airbnb. Yeah, it was a disaster. So she ended up getting arrested. Police were asking her to leave and she ended up getting arrested because she was so drunk she refused, or drunk or whatever. And then I had to put all of her stuff in storage. It turned into a nightmare. I had to file a restraining order against her because she kept calling my work, calling me, threatening to leave bad reviews. And I just want to tell everybody, I'm not always drama.
Not always.
Not always drama. Once
That's
every 10 years or something. So anyways, yeah, I had to have what's called an order of protection here because she wouldn't leave me alone. It was unbelievable how she tried to reach me and stuff. So the lawyers for the city of Phoenix were like, wow, this kind of sets precedent. Do you treat an Airbnb like a hotel where if you're too loud, you get evicted right then? And then her attorney or public defender was saying, well, no, she needs notice. And I'm like, but it was just a one-night rental anyways. So yeah, there's my story. Top that one, you guys.
Well, that's so hard when the laws are a little iffy on it, right?
For sure. Well, and Airbnbs were so new at the time, right? Yeah. Too. So,
It is interesting about, a few things that come to mind, but the one about, sticking to your system of, and your system was you're not going to take anybody kind of same night. And, obviously I know that she wore you down, but I'm sure that'll never happen again. It reminded me of a story because during our monthly Mogul Mastermind, we do all sorts of different topics. And when Airbnb was, several years ago, kind of really coming online in Edmonton, we had a speaker, not as dramatic as police, but an interesting story about seeing kinks in your systems and trying to fix them. The gentleman on stage was talking about how he had a 3-unit Airbnb going. So the building was large enough that there was a main floor on the house and then there was 2 basement suites, Airbnbs. And he's really big into the door code. So he doesn't use a lot of keys. He really likes the door codes. And I'd seen this house and there's probably 15 different door codes that go into all sorts of different areas. And it was the middle of winter, and he was horribly sick. And this gentleman was supposed to show up to get into the rental at 9 or 10 o'clock, and he didn't get there till 2 o'clock, and it's really, really, really cold. And so the door code didn't work. It had
expired or something?
Had expired. Yeah, the battery had gone dead or something like that. And so he phones the office, who's trying to get a hold of this gentleman. His name is Tom. And he's so sick, his phone's off, so no one's answering. So this guy's out in the middle of the dark at 2 o'clock in the morning, upset, calling people, being kind of a little bit vocal because he's trying to get into his unit. In the meantime, in the other basement unit, there's these 2 young girls who had been spending the evening getting drunk on wine and talking.
Sounds like a good Friday night.
Yeah, that's right. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, they hear this ruckus outside, which is this guy, and they think that he's stalking them, and he's trying to break into their unit.
Gosh.
So, anyways, the point of his story was that whether they need it or not, he changes the batteries every 30 days in his door code.
That is
so they never
point.
die.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's good advice. Definitely. So we don't want to be a commercial here for not renting. We're just
That's right. Yeah. It kind of started out that way because, when you're dealing with tenants, there's always going to be, some things. So it's good to know in advance some of the things that you might run into. Hopefully never a naked person in the property, but all of the stories turned out well. So they're not.
Well, and I always go back to.
Except for mine.
Yeah, except for Diane's. I mean,
that
goes without saying, right? Because it's Diane.
Yeah. I do always, when we deal with newer investors and, when you're coaching them a little bit, I always remind them that, as soon as you buy the first property, you've got to treat it like you've opened a business. I think a lot of people fall down on that because I'll mention to them, and we've got friends that own some Tim Hortons in town, which is, you know, kind of like Dunkin' Donuts down in the United States. And I will tell these people that are looking to getting investing, you know, if somebody comes in to a Tim Hortons at 10 o'clock at night and goes into the bathroom and trashes that bathroom, or causes a ruckus or something like that, as a business owner, you have to deal with that. So you're always going to be dealing with unfortunate circumstances that a lot of times, unfortunately, deal with people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, hopefully, and again, I always keep, the reason I remember that story with the door codes is that the thing that was most impressed upon me is that he always tries to make sure that the same sort of problem doesn't happen a second time. He tries to develop a system so that it gets taken care of. So if there is any sort of situation that happens where you've got naked people showing up at the door, you know, that stuff's going to happen, but it's how you deal with it. And you know, I think about Tracie.
Yeah, how you deal with it in your personal life is definitely different how you deal with it
that's right.
professional. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But I also, you know, I sound, you know, to my clients when I say, you know, you should think about renting. My broker's going to hate me when I say this, but always when my clients say, hey, I want to sell my property, I'm like, well, have you thought about renting it out? And they're like, I don't want the pain and I don't want the. So on one hand, I'm telling people, you know, here's the cons of it, but also here's the pros too. It's worth it in the end to have that passive income. And people are like, I just don't want the headache. I said, but you'll, you know, stay in a job that's, you know, stressful and all that stuff, you know, just to get a little bit of, you know, possible stress at times, you know what I mean? It's definitely worth it. With the appreciation you get and with that passive income. So, you know.
Yeah, and further to that, back to what I was saying, it's about, you know, educating yourself. And, you know, they say it's a hassle because they're not necessarily going out and talking to you or anybody else that's got experience and saying, okay, how do I deal with this in a preventative situation, not you know, stepping into a bunch of stuff because they weren't educated at the beginning. I mean, you're always there's a naked tenant out there in every landlord's future, I'm sure.
Yeah, if you're lucky.
Yeah. So,
Oh, good.
but it's how you deal with it, and then also kind of knowing that yeah, again, I come back to, you own a business, stuff's going to happen, and stuff happens at work all the time too. I remember talking to somebody who owned a business, and he also owned a couple of rental properties, and he was, oh man, the calls and all that stuff. And I was like, well, what do you do? I'm sure you get irate clients at your place of business. What do you deal with them? Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I've got this system and I've got that person to handle it and this, that. And I mean, like, and why aren't you doing that with your rentals? I mean, you've already got this business system in place. And he was just like, I never even thought about that. So yeah, he then suddenly had a completely different look at owning these two properties, and started developing some systems, and everything was much better for him after that.
Oh, good. And then thinking of the end game for sure, you know, so focusing on that rather than these little irritants. We have home warranties here, which what I do, when I had a rental, I've sold mine now. But our home warranties are about $500, $600 a year. So I would write into the lease, and it covers things like your air conditioning, your, appliances, your plumbing, all that kind of stuff. So I would just say, put a home warranty on it. And then so that your tenant is also looking after the place and making sure they're not stuffing, you know, a roll of toilet paper down the toilet, is they are responsible for the service charge if anything breaks down. So reasonable, then I would reimburse if it's something like air conditioning, because that's not any fault of their own, but stuff like plumbing and stuff, then, or appliances breaking, I would make them have to pay the $75 service call. So then all of a sudden your tenants are taking care of everything because they don't want to pay that service call to the home warranty.
Right.
Yeah, that's no, we don't think I've heard of that, putting a warranty on a pre-owned property from a tenant standpoint. Is that what I'm hearing? Because
yeah, it's kind of like insurance. Well, this might be our $1 million idea.
Right?
So
Yeah.
warranties in Canada. Yeah. So a lot of times they'll replace, and then they have subcontractors like the company. So I love Fidelity Home Warranty. Okay. They actually replaced an AC unit in my other property. And that's crazy because that's worth how much? And so what they'll do is they'll repair it, and they have subcontractors that these businesses, AC companies, plumbing companies, electricians, all of that kind of stuff. And yeah, they contract them out. The contractor accepts less just to get more business. And the person or myself, yeah, they pay $75 to $80 for a service call for them to come out.
I'd never heard. I mean, it might be in Canada. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I've never heard of it before. It's a great idea.
Yeah, definitely. Now, some people may say, well, some of them only put Band-Aids on it and they don't replace items, but I've had really good experience with mine. Hot water heaters, the coils on the garage, replacing those when those broke, garbage disposal or garbage disposal down here, garburator up there. That kind of stuff. And my fridge actually, my fridge quit working and they replaced the motherboard. I guess fridges have motherboards in this one. And
Yeah,
I
they
said,
do, and they're
you
not
know,
cheap.
yeah. And I said, how much was this? He goes, well, we're not allowed to say. And I said, well, I would just want to know if this home warranty is worth it. He goes, believe me, this covered the cost of your home warranty. Cause yeah, it was incredibly expensive. So, well, let's start a business there, Devin. You have to get rich quick.
Let's look into it for sure.
I'm quitting real estate this week. So
I guess we can't release this episode until after we get the business started.
That's right. Yeah. So
anyone watching, it's our idea first.
Our idea.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. Or you have to put us in on it.
That's right.
We
get a cut.
Because it's on there. And for this episode, we really wanted to talk about a Q&A session that Mogul Realty Group had last night, talking about buying investment properties down in Phoenix, but we've kind of done the full length of our
so unusual when you're talking to me.
So I think how about we save it for next week? We can do that. We can talk about it next week. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll wrap up for today. Diane, is there anything else that you want to add to our topic today, or
if I'm still a real estate agent,
yeah, that's right. If you still have a job by then,
once a year, I'm like, I quit. If I'm still a real estate agent and you'd like to buy property in the Phoenix metro area, my number is 602-620-2277. And my email is can'trememberheremail@gmail.com.
And send her a nice email because Diane's been through enough. Just even send an email to say, hey, Diane.
It's okay. It's going to be okay. Yeah. Everything's welcome.
And when you're doing that, you can also forward the nice email to Devin. How do they contact you?
Sounds great. Devin Gray with eXp Realty, DEVIN at mogulrg.com. Cell phone is 780-951-9279.
Yeah, and that wraps up our episode for this week. Happy Canada Day for the Canadians watching. And then happy 4th of July for all the Americans that are watching this show. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next week.